we're looking at Matthew chapter 1. And in Matthew chapter 1 is probably one of your favorite scriptures. I know you probably had it for your devotions this morning, and you read it often. You might have even memorized it. But it's the genealogy. And it goes from verse 1 all the way down through and includes verse 16, actually into verse 17. Because by the time you get into verse 17, he's doing a summary. And he starts out with the book in verse 1, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac begot Jacob. Jacob begot Judah and his brother. And I'd read the rest of them, but I can't pronounce the names. So, and he goes on and on and on with this, so-and-so begot so-and-so, who begot so-and-so, who begot so-and-so, and finally ends up in verse 16, and Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who was called Christ. So the whole focus, obviously, of the genealogy is on the person of Jesus himself. So he's basically doing one single thing. If you were a Jew in Jesus' day and you came up and I came up to you and I said, hey, I'm the Messiah. First thing you're going to do is look me in the eye and say, well, what's your genealogy? What's your ancestry? Who's your father? Where do you come from? And if you could not say, I come through the genealogy of King David, then they would dismiss you. So the very first proof of anybody being a Messiah, claiming to be a Messiah, the very first test you have to pass is the idea of your genealogy. So Matthew, writing to Jews, starts with that. And you'll note in verse 1, he starts out the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David. Then he says, the son of Abraham, and begins the genealogy. In other words, David was born hundreds of years after Abraham, so he doesn't start mentioning Abraham first, he mentions David first, because that's the key. So he introduces us to Jesus, who is literally passing through the genealogy of David. And the reason that's so significant is because God came to David, King David, and said, I'm promising you, I'm making a promise to you, that there will always be a king sitting on the throne of Judah. There will be a king. And that king would be the Messiah. So as you trace it through, Jesus ends up being that king. And this is the proof of it right here, he says. Now the genealogy is really significant in another way, and that is that at the end of the genealogy, he gives a summary of the genealogy itself, which is really exciting. You'll note in verse 17 it says, for all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. So he takes 1/3 of the genealogy and sets it aside and says, the 1/3, the first third of Jewish history is from Abraham to King David. And it was 14 generations. Then he looks at the second third and says, from David until the captivity in Babylon are 14 generations. So there's another third of Jewish history. Then he gives the last third of Jewish history, bringing us up to date to the time he was writing, and says the captivity in Babylon until Christ are 14 generations. So you got 14 generations, and 14 generations, which add up to be 42. Oh, you're good. 42 generations. Now, when you really research it, there were more than 42 generations, but one of the things they did is they memorized their genealogy. And in memorizing their genealogy, they made it easy to memorize. So 42 was easy to memorize. He puts it into system, and it's easy to memorize. So the genealogy is really, really, so don't pass over this. I know, when you're reading the Bible through in a year, you just pass over the genealogies because, oh, boring. But there's really some really neat stuff in here. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Now, when you look at the Jewish history then, as he presents it in that division, the first third of Jewish history is remarkable because they didn't have a king. There was no king. We call it a theocracy. I apologize. There was a king, but there wasn't a man king. See, God was king. See, a theocracy is, theo is the word God, and it's a government ruled by God. Wouldn't that be something if God would become our president? So in the first third of Jewish history, they had no man king. God was their king. Now, in the second third of Jewish history, the middle section, it's a monarchy, meaning man was king. They came and demanded a king. So they had a man king. Then they went into captivity, and the last third, they had no king, but God wasn't king. So they were ruled by fate. Whatever happened, happened. They're on their own. So you see these thirds taking place. Now, the first third we want to talk about a little bit tonight. The first third is a theocracy. God is king. God is king. Which really is a parallel to your life. See, what God really wants to be is your king. Well, what's a king do? Well, he bosses me around, makes me do stuff, and collects taxes. So I have to serve him and take my time, enlist in his army, do all of this stuff. That's what God wants. Well, you've got to understand the kind of kingship that God set up. So if you're going to get this, you're going to have to revamp your thinking about kingship, because it's altogether different deal. Let me try to help you with it. Start with this. God has a plan. God has a plan. I'm telling you, God has a plan. He doesn't have a plan. He has a plan. Oh, I'm talking plan. Real plan. Big plan. Eternal plan. Forever plan. Millions of years kind of plan. A big deal. Really a big plan. God has a plan. And you are right in the middle of that plan. God has a plan, but he's always had a plan. In other words, when you look at the genealogy, the whole unfolding of the genealogy as it lays out, it's not just a bunch of people doing a bunch of stuff and it all kind of falls in place. It's not that. It's that there is a distinct, overwhelming plan. Now, you can say, I don't buy that. Okay, that's all right. But you can do that in anything. You can look at the creation of the world and all the minute things that are in existence. You can look at your hand and the phenomenal activity of just the bone structure and the movement of the hand itself. You can look at the fact that your fingerprints are different than anybody else's, and nobody else has ever had the fingerprints you have. You can look at your DNA and say, it is absolutely unique and nobody has ever had my DNA or ever will have my DNA. You can look at all that and say, it just happened. You can do that. But I would propose to you, somebody's got a plan. Not just a plan, but somebody has a plan. I'm talking big plan. And the whole creation thing is all unfolding a plan. And again, when you get into the genealogy, these people just didn't come together, folks. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac begot Jacob. Not just accidental. Somebody is involved in this who has an overwhelming plan. And he's strategically locating, putting people together. And at the end of this plan, Jesus is going to be produced. And the Messiah is going to come and the world is going to be redeemed. Because somebody's got a plan. Now, do you see that it's really easy? Think about this. It's really easy to get so involved in the details of the plan, you forget there's a plan. In other words, you could begin to study every guy in this genealogy. You could begin to study each one of them, and they all have a story. And there's Abraham with all the stuff he went into, and you can tell with his nephew Lot and the pillar of salt. And Sodom and Gomorrah and all that whole, you can just get so involved in the stories that you forget, whoa, see, it's not about the details. Stand back, look at the overall, which is he is giving us in the genealogy. Stand back and look at the 42, forget about Abraham and what he did or didn't do. Stand back, look at the whole genealogy and what have you got? Whoa, somebody put something together. I want you to do that with your life. See, I get so involved in the details of my life. Oh, man, I got to get up at 5:30. Oh, brother. And then I got to go down and, oh, man, flat tire. Oh, forevermore. See, I get so involved in the details of my existence that I forget there's a plan. See, I get in the middle of an argument with you. You tick me off. I get this, I get that. Then I got a bill I can't pay. And what am I going to? Oh, brother, why didn't they turn that light off forevermore? And I get so involved in the details of my living, I forget to stand back and say, whoa, wait a minute. This is not about whether somebody turned the light off or not. This is not about, oh, well, they didn't do me right. This is not about winning an argument. There is a plan, people. And I'm telling you, you don't want to miss the plan. You don't want to miss the plan. Because you are right in the middle of the plan. And you matter. And God has strategically got a plan that He is pulling off. And you are a unique part of that plan, as every one of these individuals in this genealogy were. So, start with that. God has a plan. Let me give you the second idea to try to help you with this. God has a plan. God is the plan. See, God did not come up with a plan apart from you. In other words, God didn't come over here. You know how we do. We come over here, I come up with this plan, and then I give instructions that you, go do that. And I have a plan, and you are going to carry out my plan. And I'm going to sit here and watch you do it. You better do it right, or it won't be done, or I'll be upset, or I'll... That isn't what God did. See, God didn't come up with a plan and then give instructions, and you guys... See, God came up with a plan and got right in the middle of the plan Himself, because He is the plan. In other words, God came up with a plan. And what's His plan? Think about this. God came up with a plan. And what's His plan? Jesus. Well, who's Jesus? Well, He's God. Well, I thought He's the one that came up with a plan. He is. But He's the plan. I know. Because God is the plan. So He planned Himself. Now, that's not unique in the gospel. See, you come and you say, and we've talked about this, but you come and you say, is there a sacrifice for my sins? Yes, there is. There is a high priest who is offering a sacrifice for you. Well, who's the high priest who's offering a sacrifice for me? Jesus is the high priest, and He's offering a sacrifice for you. Well, what's the sacrifice He's offering for me? Jesus. Well, I thought you said He's the high priest. He is. Well, you said He was the sacrifice. He is. He's the whole thing. I want to go to heaven. I want to be a Christian. Okay, you better get on the way. What's the way? Jesus, I said, I am the way. Well, if I'm on the way, where am I going? Well, you're going to Jesus, who is full salvation. Well, so He's where I'm going. That's right. But you said He's the way to get there. That's right. So when you're on your way, you're already there. Do you see that? See, He's the whole deal. See, I want to enter through the door. Okay. Well, where's the door? The door's over there. Well, who is the door? Jesus is the door. So the way to get to the door is Jesus, and when you get there, it's Jesus. See, the whole deal is nothing but more Jesus. See, God had a plan, and guess what His plan is? Himself. He is the plan for you. He doesn't plan for you to be happy. It's a little startling, isn't it? His chief concern is not tickles up and down your spine and pleasing you. He has a plan. Will His plan please you? Get into His plan and talk to me, and then we'll answer that question. Guys ended up in Philippi jail with bleeding backs. Well, that's it, isn't it? I'm not gonna. Whoa. Singing at midnight. Isn't that interesting? Because this was not comfort. This was not ease. This was not, oh, make me feel good, touch my flesh. That wasn't what this was. See, this was God has this overwhelming plan, and you were built to be in the middle of his plan, and you know who his plan is? Jesus. He is the plan. So God has a plan, and his plan is himself. Now, it's interesting that he chose this people called Israel. Started with Abraham, and that's the genealogy, the people of Israel. So here's God choosing this people called Israel and building a whole nation. Why did he choose them? Because the Jews were better looking than everybody else. They had bigger noses. I could be one. See, no, that isn't. The Jews, why did he choose the Israelites? Because they had talent? No. Because they had money? No. Why did he? It wasn't anything about any of the qualities that they have. See, this is not, don't come to me and say, well, God wouldn't pick me. Why? Well, I don't have any talent. This is not about talent. Well, I'm ugly too. Well, you're still in, because this is not about beauty. Well, see, I'm not too bright either. Well, you're still in. Because this isn't about you. This is about him and the plan. So you can't cop out on this because, well, I don't have, I'm not, well, I wasn't, I've never, well, I didn't go to Bible college, I didn't. See, no, you can't cop out on this about that. Why? Because this isn't about you, this is about him, and he's got the plan, and he is the plan. So he chose the Israelites. Why? Because he had to choose somebody. He didn't choose, get this, he didn't choose them to do something for him. He chose them to do something through them. That's the genealogy. See, these guys are over here, go through the 42 generations. They fall in love, get this gal, fall in love, man. They have kids. Did they have a clue what they were doing? Probably not. Probably not. Did they come along and say, oh, I got to marry you? Why? And we got to have this child. Why? Because we're producing a genealogy through which the Messiah is going to come. I doubt it. See, I really doubt it. You know? They were just, but God was doing something through them beyond what they even knew. Because they were his people. And it didn't take talent. And it didn't take money. And it didn't take good looks. All it took was being his. And God wanted to do something through them. He didn't want them to do something for him. That is a phenomenal shift. In fact, when you trace that through, you find that consistently, time after time after time after time, again and again and again. See, God isn't interested in you doing something for him. He's desperate to do something through you. See, all God wants is for you to be who you are. And you know who you are? You are a human being. And you know who you aren't? You are not God. I want to be God. I don't want to be God out there. That would be too big. See, I don't want to be God over the universes. That would be, I can't handle that. I don't want to be God over Mars, Jupiter, and I don't want to be God over, I don't want to take care of gravity. I'm not interested in that. See, I'm not even interested in running the government of the United States. I don't care about that. But I have drawn a circle around my life, and I've declared, I'm going to be God here. And you weren't built to be that. Well, who's going to be God in this circle? God wants to be God. He's the plan. And if I would become who I am, which is a man, through which God can do what he wants to do, so that God can do for me rather than me doing for him. See, where did you get the idea that all Christianity was serving God? I'm going to serve him. No, he wants to serve you. That is so biblical, ladies and gentlemen. When you walk through this theocracy, you know what you find out? God did everything, and he did it for them. Where did they get their food? Manna from the sky. Every day. Did they plant crops? Not in the wilderness. They're traveling, and God rains down. They got quail out of the bush, people. Hey, you need some meat? Go pick a quail off the bush. You ladies would love this. Their shoes didn't wear out. You never could buy a new pair of shoes. Only needed one pair. Wow. Wouldn't that be phenomenal? Why? Because God provided. He provided victory over their enemies. What are we going to do? Well, march around the city 7 times and let the walls fall in. What? Did they participate? Yes, they participated. Were they right in the middle of it? Yes. Were they lazy? No. Yet God did everything for them. Why? Because He's God. They were human. And the minute you become God, so you see what we've done? I become God. Now, I don't mind God intervening when I need Him and doing what I want Him to do. See, when I get in a bind, God, get me out of this. But in the meantime, I'm in charge. But see, that isn't the setup, people. The setup, He's God, He's King, He's ruling. And when I come under His control, and He is allowed to do something through me, that He has a plan. And when He's allowed to do it through me, life comes together. Wouldn't it be interesting if all the chaos of your own personal life, broken relationships, hurts, are all because I'm not coming under His control and allowing Him to do through me. And if you say, well, I have come under His control and it still didn't work out, how do you know that? Philippi jail, can you see them? This isn't working out too well, is it? My back is bleeding. My hands are in the stock. And yet, God had a plan and was doing something through them in the midst of the pain and the difficulty of their hour. See, I'm telling you, God has a plan. And He is the plan. And He wants to rule in the plan. Would you let Him? Would you take your life and bring it totally? Don't quit anything. Don't stop anything. Don't reform. Don't, okay, I'll read my Bible. Don't, well, I'll pray. Don't, no. Would you just take your life, just like it is, and bend it and say, hey, I give you. I come as one, a man, a woman, a human being, sick of trying to be God. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to work your plan through me. And if you say, I'm not doing that, let me ask you, how's your plan working? Yeah, look back over your life. Tell me how your plans worked. Jesus, I've tried to take your role, haven't I? I wasn't built to be God. You didn't create me to be God. You created me to be a man filled with God. And in that filling, you would provide everything for me that I need. But God, it seems to be so difficult for us to turn our lives loose to you, over to you, take our hands off, and trust you that you will give us manna from the sky. You will give us plans to defeat our enemy. You will march in our lives and do something through us that we never could get done on our own, and redemption would be ours because we let you be who you are, and we have become who we are. You are God, I am not. You are King, I am not. Will I let you be who you are in my life? If you are the plan, oh Jesus, work your plan through me. I pray thee. I would be a platform upon which you could work your plan in my life and display it for a world. Heads are bowed. I invite you tonight to kneel at an altar, to seek. You've tried to be God. You've tried to do for Him as if you were in charge and knew what to do. Would you let God be God in your life? Would you let Jesus come and fill you, and in indwelling you, begin to do through you the fulfillment of His dream and His plan? Would you open yourself? Would you risk yourself that He would move all the mountains, open all the doors, and do in your life fulfilling the dream that He has in making you? I want to kneel.